Good morning, everyone. Nice to meet you. It's my very first time at this conference. My name is Pedro Fortuna. I'm CTO and co-founder of Jscrambler. I've been working with security for the last 20 years. The 12 last, I've been focusing on web application security and anything surrounding the browser. Today, I'll be talking about the risk of third-party code, namely with web applications or websites. My main goal is to raise awareness on this risk, and hopefully by the end of this presentation, you will have a much deeper understanding of this risk and what you can do to reduce your exposure to it. So a few decades ago, web applications were just one of the many methods to deliver software to end users. But as we know, today, web applications are the standard. Like, no one cares about installing software in their desktops. They only do it if they have to do it. And the reason why is because web applications are very easily developed, so it's very fast in terms of development, and they are very convenient to deliver to users. Obviously, this has to do with the amount of third-party code that we are reusing, that we are able to reuse across the whole supply chain of a web application. But this also increases the surface of the risk that we are incurring. So there is a bit of a hidden cost in there that we need to factor in. But today, I'm specifically focusing on the browser, as it is a low-hanging fruit place to steal sensitive data from users. So I don't know if you know, but the biggest GDPR fine to date was 4 years ago, and it was a data leakage that happened inside the browser. I'm talking about British Airways. They had third-party scripts that was tampered, was compromised, and the web skimmer was injected and was able to steal payment information from almost 400,000 customers of their website. And this was happening during the course of several weeks. So obviously, this was a huge impact, but the impact goes beyond the impact of the data breach compliance and the fine. Indirect impact is caused also by reputational damages, loss of customer trust, and these have a long-lasting effect into the business. But this is just one example of a rising trend. So I'm here to focus on the browser as a security blind spot. So up until very recently, I would say like the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of the companies weren't even looking at the browser and what the scripts are doing on the client side. According to recent stats, around 70% of all code running on the browser is third-party code. So we're talking about roughly 35 different third-party components. These components were voluntarily added by companies. So they should know that they are there, that they are running, but they don't necessarily know what they are doing and how they are touching data. The problem is made worse because these 35 components, once they load, because how the web works, they are able to load more codes without even telling the web application owner. So on average, they will load 31 additional scripts that the website owner doesn't know about at all, not alone knowing what this additional code is doing. So obviously, adding all of this, there is a security blind spot on the browser and what is happening over there. So technically, the problem results from the fact that all scripts have the same amount of power once they load. So there is no permission granularity. All the scripts have access to forms. They can actually see what the user is typing into those forms as they type them. They can collect this data, and they are able to send this data to any external domain by default. And they can do that maliciously or accidentally, or at least without being authorized to do it. And this can go for months, because companies usually lack the ability to monitor it, to even know that this is happening. Traditional solutions like vendor assessments, although mandatory and useful, and I'm not recommending that we shouldn't do them, they are done initially. So to assess the level of security, to assess the security posture of the vendors, but they won't tell you if tomorrow these third-party components start misbehaving, start touching data without authorization. So continuous monitoring is needed. And this is basically what I've hoped that you take out of this talk. But let me give you further insights on continuous monitoring. So I've mentioned the third-party components that were voluntarily added to the page. What we have been seeing is that even though they were voluntarily added, companies don't necessarily are aware of all of these third parties that are running on the page. In fact, one of the reasons why that happened is because sometimes scripts are added, different departments are adding scripts to the page. For instance, a common example is that the marketing department, using a tag manager, frequently adds like loyalty scripts, vendor scripts, like analytics, things that will improve the business. And there's a sense of urgency. They are mandated to do whatever they need to in order to push the business forward. So they usually don't warn like the security, the risk, and compliance teams that they are doing this. Obviously, this makes these latter folks very unhappy about that. Other thing that happens is that even though you may be aware that a script is running, you are not necessarily aware what this script is doing. And in fact, we found that most of these scripts actually touches data more than they should and more than they need. And this is one of like the eye-opening gotchas that you can see when using solutions such as ours. And also, like I said, a script might not be misbehaving today, but tomorrow it can be doing completely evil stuff. So continuous monitoring is definitely needed. At this point, let me bring to your attention some first-hand data from that we collected last year during the Black Friday of one of our biggest retail customers. This data was collected during like 30 hours, more or less. And during this time, we observed a total of 144,000 data records leaking attempts made by third parties, of which 9,000 were specifically PII data. So obviously, we were there. We were able to prevent this data from being touched and from being leaked. But that's not the usual case for most websites. There's nothing preventing this from happening. Some cases, it's malicious activity or intentionally malicious. Some other cases are just accidental. We see even like cases of third-party libraries collecting email addresses from your users and things like that. If we use the reference $180 per PII leaked cost, we estimate a total of 1.6 million of savings for this customer. So this gives you a number. This gives you a reference of how high the cost can be if this risk is left unattended or unaddressed by your organization. So once our solution is deployed, we provide a web page inventory. So we basically tell you what scripts can be found and what they are doing. This makes organizations be much more in control about what's happening on the browser. And it provides a high impact because it provides visibility that we were discussing just before this talk. And is very helpful in demonstrating that compliance with the existing regulations like GDPR, PSD2, HIPAA, PCI DSS. Oh, and by the way, since last week, Webpage Inventory is actually mandatory for achieving PCI DSS compliance. So this is something that will greatly accelerate the need for this type of solutions. Even though, on a technical perspective, our solution is able to monitor and block any type of code action from third parties, we very much focus to make it simple for our customers. We follow a data-centric approach to let our customers know what scripts are potentially doing, like touching data, doing data, and potentially exfiltrating this data. So with our solution, they can quickly find out what's happening, and they can very easily mitigate the threats. Also, one of the things that you can do is we can filter by data type, and so that you can focus on like higher risk types of data, like credit card information or email address, and then you go all the way down until you address all the types that you need to address. Okay, so this provides full control over the sensitive data that is manipulated on the browser side. So don't forget that usually the browser side is, there's a lack of visibility for most companies in regards to what happens there. And this is all I had for today. So I look forward to your questions, and I invite you to see our solution live in our booth, or to reach out to us in order to request a free inventory report for your companies. Thank you.